I can tell you that both spouses and families, spouses and children, are left in the dark. They are left out in the cold. There are some resources.
Right.
It's few and far between. They are underrepresented, and their sacrifice is underappreciated.
Mm.
It is a real gap. There's a gap with female veterans for sure. They just don't seem to be treated with the full respect that they deserve. Hello, friends. I'm proud to give a shout out to our sponsor, the Canadian Legacy Project. Veterans Affairs Canada is very limited in its service offering to veterans, so the Canadian Legacy Project has stepped up to fill the gap. CLP develops and delivers a full suite of free programs for Canadian veterans. CLP celebrates our veterans by offering meaningful support for healing and the transition to civilian life. Homes for Heroes, Business Boot Camp, service dogs, educational bursaries, equine therapy, and more are available through the Canadian Legacy Project. Find out more at CanadianLegacy.org. Hello, all you beautiful souls. Thank you for joining me for another edition of Operation Tango Romeo, the Trauma Recovery Podcast. As a lot of you may know, I've been to Ottawa a couple of times testifying at the Standing Committee at Veterans Affairs. I've been there in person twice and on video once. And yet, not a lot of people ask me questions when I'm there. Just Cathay Wagantall and Blake Richards. Other than that, people pretend I'm not even there and don't ask me any questions. So I've reached out to Cathay Wagantall and have her on the show today. Cathay, thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for coming to committee.
Well, it's so important that if you have an opportunity like that to do it, and I think it, even though it's a giant pain in the butt, I think it's worth the flight, even though it's just 5 minutes. What's disheartening is that the last time I was there, like I said, nobody asked me any damn questions, even though I was begging them to ask me questions because I couldn't get it all in my 5 minutes. And I'm probably the number one subject matter expert in the country, if not the world, about healing modalities. So let me help you. Like we can do better. There are better healing modalities out there. I have found them, and the point of my being there was to share them. But all I could get was a cursory, well, here's a top 3 list, and then that was it. And then there was no questions about it because they're still mad at me at the Liberal Party for blowing the whistle on MAID being offered to veterans. Was that your take on it as well?
Well, I honestly, I don't begin to try to admit that I in any way know what's motivating or what thoughts are in the minds of my colleagues on the other side of the floor. So I appreciate the frustration, and I know that's shared generally with most veterans who we do ask to come to committee to share. I mean, that is a huge ask for so many. I think you're more comfortable than many, and you know when they hear the process and that you get 5 minutes to make your presentation, of course, that just makes their head explode. Because how to express what they need to express in that amount of time. So the idea obviously is, as much as possible, to give opportunity, not taking up the question time with our questions, but giving more time to our veterans to express themselves in response to the focus of the committee that day.
What's happened to me testifying there more than once, and what has happened, I saw it happen to Kelsey Sharon, I saw it happen to others, is that instead of being asked questions, one offender in particular, although I've reached out to him and I've invited him on the show, Sean Casey, he will filibuster. So instead of asking questions of the person that just flew across the country to be there for 5 minutes, instead of asking that person a question, they would make a giant long statement to filibuster the time. Is there a way to propose that not be allowed? That you can't filibuster with a statement, out of respect for the people that are there testifying?
Right. I mean, there are different time allotments based on where you are in the process, right? So if you're at the very beginning, you get 6 minutes. And then if it makes another round, 5 minutes. And then I think it's 2.5 minutes. So it honestly, it is an art as well. And if I'm not familiar with the times you're mentioning, but if if Mr. Casey or anyone chooses to use up their whole time, there isn't anything that says that they can't make a statement. For myself, it was a learning process to realize that I have to be succinct so that I give the witness the time that they should have in light of the fact, as you say, they've made that effort and they obviously are there because of a request to come, and we should respect that. I think on occasion, as you've probably found, there are some witnesses that are put forward by one political party, others by another political party, so they tend to ask questions of those that they've brought to share the perspective that that particular party in their pre-committee meetings and whatnot have indicated that, yeah, these guys, here's where they come from, here's the types of questions we'd like to ask them and have them the opportunity to share.
Well, that's certainly part of it. It's sad that people want to hear their own opinions as opposed to the truth or the opinions of others, because that's supposed to be the entire point of these standing committees, is hearing something new, hearing something that you don't want to hear if it's the truth. But if you only want to listen to, because it's definitely happened to me when I've when I've been there,
Yes.
and although I will keep inviting him to be on the show so we can have a real conversation. Uh, Mr. Casey seems to be the worst offender because I've seen him do it several times where instead of respecting the guest and asking the guest a question, makes a great big long statement and eats up all the time with the statements. Like, you're not here to make a statement. We're not here to get your opinion. We're here to get the opinions of the people that just flew across the country to be here. So it's anyway. I suggest that there be a rule proposed. I don't know what the governing body is or how that a new rule can be proposed, but I would call it the Sean Casey rule to not filibuster. It's just rude. It's
Yeah,
rude.
well, there are times when even on our side of the floor, we've in the midst of something brought forward a motion. There are political plays. There's no question about that, and I'll apologize to you, Mark, for that side of the situation because it is at times very frustrating, and rightfully so, to those that we call to the committee, and especially, I mean, let's talk about the focus on veteran suicide. This is an issue like so many. I have to say, I call myself the old matron of the committee because since Mr. Trudeau won his first election, I've been there throughout this decade. And there are times I get really frustrated that, we've gone through four elections, and every time the makeup of committees changes. And so the focus then is, oh, we need to study this. And I'll go, been there, done that under this regime, under the Liberal government. Why don't we go back and look at the recommendations that the government agreed to and see where they're at with those? But no, it's always we need to restudy. And I cannot imagine, and I know it is very frustrating to witnesses that get called back over and over and over again, basically giving the same recommendations, and we don't see a whole lot of improvement.
Well, the way that it's run is the opposite of thank you for your service. I can tell you that. Just the minister's seat of Veterans Affairs, what a hot potato that is. It's like the toilet bowl prize. Nobody wants it. And it's like, oh, great, I'm a minister, but a minister of Veterans Affairs, bleh. And it's almost always treated like the toilet bowl prize, and people can't wait to get shuffled out of it. We were all happy when Jeanette Pettipas Taylor had it. I don't give a rat's behind what party you're a part of, right? She's part of the Liberal Party. Didn't care. What I cared about was, are you doing your job? Do you
Hmm.
give a shit? Do you show up? Are you actually trying to do something good? And she did something good, and she did show up, and she put on the miles and came out to meet us and try to understand and took it seriously. And it was more than just empty words and compassion.
Hmm.
She got a couple of things done and was even responsive to me. I was an inch away from getting her on the show. Would have been the first Liberal I've ever had on the show. And I've invited a bunch of them,
Hmm.
but they have no interest in talking to me. It's really, really strange. I don't understand it.
Yeah, it's hard to understand from your perspective. I am sure of that. Um, it's good to hear. I hear that all the time. What you're saying about doesn't matter who, which party, and of all the committees, um, Veterans Affairs should should be the most congenial, most all rowing in the same direction. So I can appreciate the frustration there. And you know, no party's done it perfectly. We've certainly said that ourselves. I remember
Oh yeah.
John Broussard saying, and I'm forgetting what the issue was, but there are times when you just need to say, yeah, we really messed up there. And for me, it's a learning process. And like I've mentioned before, it is such a convoluted system. And, you know, veterans think, okay, this is going this way, and then all of a sudden things change or whatever, and misunderstandings. So it is a very traumatizing experience, is what we hear from so many veterans. And it's not all right, we have to admit. There's many that are managing quite well. But the ones that we should be most concerned about are those that are truly struggling to get what they need and facing, well, the sanctuary trauma, the issues around trying to get the care that they need when they come home from serving or serving in whatever role, to have to fight so hard to get what is, as you say, I mean, it's a duty to consult and it's a duty to care that we need to do a far better job of. And I wouldn't be the first to say that many times it does very much feel, even for me who's not in that position, that you have to prove and prove and prove and prove something that you should not have to live through over and over and over again.
Well, having a continuity of service would sure be nice. And it's one of my pet projects to try to figure out how to do that. Like, what would the structure be? And a permanent council of veterans, just like police. So every
Mm.
police service has a police council, and they have a consistent oversight on the police. I believe that that particular seat, I think all the seats should have something like this, but
Hmm.
in particular, Veterans Affairs should have a seat of people like me, veterans that are engaged with the community, people that know, that have been around, like yourself, like you've been at this committee for a while.
Hmm.
So you'd probably be a great addition to that council. But something that creates a continuity of service. So when there's a new shadow minister or a new minister, or even new members of the standing committee, how do you read them in? How do you get them up to speed? What's the best way to do that? And that's so important because it certainly doesn't exist now. And you're right, all the parties have an issue with this. The shadow minister's spot has been a hot potato as well. But finally, we've had Blake for a few years now, and so he's had a chance to meet all the players
Hmm.
and develop a relationship with them. Right.
Hmm.
And before
Hmm.
Blake, John Broussard, before John Broussard, the other guy.
Phil. Hmm.
And it's like, well, nobody has a chance to actually do their job and to really understand, and because you have to meet the stakeholders, you have to meet the players, and have a consistent relationship with them in order to know what the heck is going on.
Hmm.
But that doesn't exist. Do you have
Right.
any suggestions on how to fix that?
Well, and from what I understand, there are they put them in place, advisory councils. There's six or seven. I think there's more now with since the Invisible No More study, specifically women focused. And so I think there's opportunity there. The question is whether or not they're truly being listened to, which I hear mixed reviews on, and whether or not they have opportunity to truly contribute to seeing things improved. And that's where I, as a civilian here, Mark, right, coming into this role, where I've tried the hardest is to just simply be there to listen and to learn over and over again from veterans, because they really do have good ideas of how to make things better, or where things are not functioning in a way that is really fair to the veteran. And as I said, over the course of this decade, you hear the same things over and over and over again, especially in regard to transition. You know, I think I think the system is just so huge and convoluted. And there are things that I think VAC gets blamed for directly. The one that comes to mind right now is in regard to being able to have supports for spouses and their family, the children, in their own right. Right now, we've learned that if a veteran dies, immediately that family is cut off from additional care. Well, I can't think of a time in your life when a family would need more, not less support is when you lose that loved one, right? Whether it is through suicide, as we're studying right now, or other causes. So it was the ombudsman that made it clear that actually the issue isn't with VAC, because the federal government actually accepted this recommendation back in 2021 that spouses have access to mental health care in their own right. Because right now, unless the veteran agrees to it and it will aid him, that support isn't there. But of course, we know how complicated family life is in the best of circumstances, let alone sometimes when a veteran is suffering and perhaps not able to really appreciate the need to give that care to the family at that point in time as well. So that is actually a legislative decision that needs to be made, or VAC needs to be given a directive that they don't have right now, and they can only work within whatever those parameters are. So that was eye-opening for me to realize, okay, the government in 2021 agreed to this and said yes, but have done nothing to implement whatever needs to be done to make that change. So that really is disconcerting when there are recommendations that have been put forward and the government has agreed to them, but there's been no action on it since 2021.
Well, I can tell you that both spouses and families, spouses and children, are left in the dark. They are left out in the cold. There are some resources, Family Resource Center and whatnot,
Right.
but it's few and far between. They are underrepresented, and their sacrifice is underappreciated. It's even a blind spot on my show. I haven't covered it enough times, maybe half a dozen times out of 350 episodes. And it is a real gap. There's a gap with female veterans for sure. They just don't seem to be treated with the full respect that they deserve. Even just walking around, if they have veterans plates, oh, is that your husband's plates? It's like,
Right.
no, idiot.
It's there's education
They're
needed
hers.
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
But also, they are. We have made some headway in regard to the military sexual trauma cases, because the move was to take it out of D&D and completely into civilian court. And they've spoken up and said, wait a minute here, we should have a choice whether we want our case to go before a civilian court or to be processed through Canadian Armed Forces. And they're being heard, I believe, at this point in time at committee. So that's good. But you're right. It's taken how long since women first joined the military, and simply joined because the government said, "Oh, by the way, women are now part of this." That is pretty no wonder there's been major challenges and issues, because you're telling a culture that's been in place for how long to suddenly make this adjustment, which wasn't fair from either direction and has caused so much pain and suffering as a result.
Yeah, while when I was in Ottawa this last time, at the same time, what you're talking about was being debated, and some of the guests that were there, like Heather Vanderveer, was there
Mm-hmm.
testifying about it, and I just don't think people understand the difference between with military sexual trauma and other types of sexual
Mm-hmm.
traumas, and that difference is the power discrepancy. Let's
Right.
say you have a normal civilian job and you have a creepy boss who keeps making comments about your butt or whatever it is. Well, you got HR and you got like you have
Mm-hmm.
some fairly easy choices. You know, you could start looking for another job. Like there's a way out. But in the military, if you're a corporal and the person doing that is a colonel,
Mm-hmm.
that's a massive power discrepancy. Like you don't have HR, you don't have the option of just hopping out or changing
Mm-hmm.
trades. Like you're stuck in it,
Mm-hmm.
and there is just not the same amount of ability to defend yourself or to do anything about it. That power discrepancy is massive. It's a lot like the power discrepancy in pedophilia. It's like you are truly a trapped victim, and there's not a lot you can do about it. It's
Mm-hmm.
so, and that's why, or part of the reason why they don't want it just to go to civilian court, because it's like, okay, now how are we going to educate all these judges of how it's different and why it's different?
Right. It is. It is. I would totally agree with you on that. And also, the challenge is that, you know, Canadians, I mean, I am a civilian. I have grandfathers who served back in World War II. But I think the Canadian public has just begun to learn in a lot of ways how challenging that structure is. And to some degree, I understand it. You know, I often hear from veterans who come and share very difficult circumstances and stories of what they've lived through. And they always come back, well, I won't say always, because even during the women's study, there were many who said, I would never encourage my daughter to do this at this point in our history because of what it's going to take to change the culture and to deal with the issues. But overall, you know, it's not the service that is the issue. So many veterans say, I would do it again in a heartbeat, and they actually still have that passion for serving their country, but also the camaraderie and, you know, having each other's backs and those types of relationships that I think are just so deep and really because your life is often on the line, or you just have that added sense of community that of course becomes very difficult when you lose that community and lose it so quickly and so nonchalantly. That's another issue that I think, you know, we have to Canadians as a generally, I think they are being very appreciative, but they really don't know. I mean, I have veteran friends who have served in very dire circumstances, and they just said, Cathy, you don't want to know, and we don't want to share. Like, that is not something the average Canadian, um, well, that they expect to handle. But where they want the understanding and the care is in things like we say. When the member serves, the family serves.
That's right.
And, you know, these types of statements that then they end up with moral injury because they come back and they were told, we're going to take care of you, we'll have your back. And then you go through all these challenges that are part of a moral injury from within the organization. So that's something I think that, you know, on top of the challenges of having what you need to go and do what you need to do, to also come back and have the care that honestly told all the time, you know, we will take care of you. And if you don't feel cared for, then there's a problem there and it needs to be fixed. And like I said, it's not, you know, hundreds of thousands have served in the Canadian military, but it's those that face what they see as persecution, and to some degree is you come back, and why do you have to go through this over and over again? Why does the system have to change, but not necessarily for the better? These types of things that just break your heart, quite honestly.
Well, the ultimate example of that sanctuary trauma is the story that I broke a few years ago, where people are talking to Veterans Affairs because they want help with PTSD or a traumatic brain injury or maybe a wheelchair ramp.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, well, I'm sorry, we can't help you, but hey, you know what we could do? And there's like no waiting list. We could kill you. We could, would you like some MAID? We got a big bucket of MAID. Well, medical assistance dying. Oh, it's really good. And we'll look after your family after.
Right.
And then let's talk
Right.
about that for a second, because that was the reason that Mr.
Mm-hmm.
Casey was filibustering, because he didn't want to hear it. And then he made the statement when I was there,
Mm-hmm.
or no, he did it to Todd Heisey,
Mm-hmm.
who's also a friend of mine.
Right.
Like
He brought up a very significant case of moral injury
yeah,
um, around that whole issue of someone that he knows personally, and
and that
Mr.
happened in
Heisel.
September, so it's still
Right.
happening.
It's recent. It's recent, and that is shocking. I think to a number of people who want to think it was a bad scenario and we've taken care of it and now it's gone. Clearly, it's not. And this is an issue in the broader Canadian population as well, but absolutely horrific when you think that these are people who have served and come for help, and
We can't
that's
help you,
what,
but we can kill you.
yeah, and
So from
but
everything
that's
you've
when,
heard, I'm sorry,
sorry,
go
I,
ahead. I just
I was just going to say that's when Mr. Casey spoke to the fact that we want to know, so we need these people to share with us so that we can get to the bottom of this.
yeah,
And
but they have, and then he called Christine Gauthier a liar while she was sitting in the room, or inferred that she was a liar.
careful,
S
yeah.
Yeah, inferred that she was a liar while she's sitting in the room. Christine Gauthier was also offered MAID twice,
Mm,
and that's why she had all the papers with her. Is like,
right.
well, like like what more do you want? So Mr. Casey can say, well, just come forward. Well, how much more do you need? I, I've brought those people forward, and I have another one that I was in conversation with yesterday.
Mm,
So yeah, people have come forward. They've used their full names, and some have used nom de guerres. But uh, I've got 3, 4, 5 that have used their full name that have come forward. So how many more that do you need?
mhm.
So what I wanted to ask you is, from everything that you've heard on that particular issue, do you think it, like they've been saying it wasn't policy, absolutely was not policy, never will be, never has been? Do you believe that? Do you believe that it wasn't policy or isn't policy?
Here's the issue to me. One of the first things debated in the House when I was a brand new member was this issue of the Supreme Court saying that we needed to bring forward legislation on assisted suicide. Um, I struggle with it right there at that first point in time, let alone the amount of time that it has been offered in Canada, the lack of oversight, the lack of follow through on a fulsome study of what has happened to date, and yet we're ramming ahead with other things like allowing mental illness to be the sole need for someone to be able to request MAID. So Canada, even according to the United Nations, where I struggle with a lot of things going on there, they've said we're out of control. And that is exactly the truth broadly. And the fact that it is happening within our veterans community says there are deep issues with having this kind of legislation. And there are deep issues with what is and isn't being done to protect Canadians, and especially those who are coming and asking for help and getting that as an option. Clearly, still happening within Veterans Affairs. I think what we need is some very serious repercussions for anyone who does that, who offers this service without, you know, being well. First of all, I don't agree with it as an option, but to be coerced or prodded towards something like that when you're coming for help is there's an issue there. I agree, Mark. I don't know how to dig to the bottom of it, other than we have very good people I know looking at this whole situation, and the checks and balances. It's the Wild West. It's the Wild West.
So, do you think it was policy?
I can't answer that. I honestly can't answer that. I would absolutely hope not. And yeah, I would absolutely hope not.
Well, I
I
can
know
prove it to
that.
you right now that it was. Here's how. So I made a call to veterans. This is years ago, and it's all published.
Mhm,
I called Veterans Affairs. I recorded the call, and
mhm,
I asked all the same questions of this service agent that were asked of who was the minister, Minister McCauley,
mm,
and all the answers that Minister McCauley gave in committee, this service agent gave me the exact opposite answers. So basically, I asked, okay, so how does the system work? If I'm in British Columbia and
mhm.
I'm a veteran and I call, who do I get on the other end? Is it
Right.
random or people assigned by province? Oh no, service agents are assigned by province. So if you're in BC, you get a BC service agent. If you're in Quebec, you get a Quebec service agent. That's how these
Mm,
queues are set up. Well, that's interesting because the first veteran where the news broke that they was offered MAID, who has settled out of court and had to sign an NDA,
I remember
and
this.
so the government paid what his lawyers told me was a life-changing amount of money. So it happened, and
Mhm,
they settled for it. But he called from British Columbia. I heard, I'm not allowed to publish it because it's not mine, but the apology call from Veterans Affairs Canada, I have the two recordings. So
mhm,
I've heard them. Blake has heard them. Other
mhm,
people have heard them because I wasn't the only one that received it from that veteran, but he
mhm.
still won't come forward. Well, he can't now.
You
Now
can't.
he
Right.
legally can't. But he called from BC, and Wendy was the service agent who called from BC out of the Vancouver office. Now, I know of an RCMP member who was offered MAID, but she cannot come forward. That was in Alberta. Bruce came forward, not his real name, out of Winnipeg. And then David Baltzer was in Toronto when it happened to him. And so he got somebody from Toronto, well, from Ontario.
I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying.
So
Mhm,
it had to be policy because there were different service agents, because there was at least 5 different service agents. Now I put this into Grok and I said, hey, here's the situation. 5 different service agents, 5 different provinces, and they're assigned by province. What are the odds that all 5 went crazy and just
mhm,
randomly decided to offer MAID? And he says, and the AI did the math. He says there's no chance. It's
mhm.
literally 1 in 10 billion was the number. One in
Well,
10 billion. So it had
the
to have
ver-
been policy.
well, like I say, I can't speak to that because I don't know personally of those dynamics. There are probably people who do, but that being said, there's an issue with this service
Yeah.
in Canada. It's and I can't believe there's a lot of things I can't believe right now that are happening across our nation, as you I'm sure are aware as well. So this is something that I'll just say I am so impressed with those who have been brave enough to speak out on the issue within our veterans community, because there is no question that even though you're a veteran now and you're not under the authority of your commanding officers or whatever, there is still ways and means to make life pretty difficult if you do say something that tarnishes. And so it takes a great deal of bravery also to do what you're doing. So we yeah, we have a lot to be proud of. We have a lot to be ashamed of, and things need to be fixed.
What is the actual power or influence of the standing committee? Like we just had
Sure.
the longest stretch that I've seen of meetings for veteran suicide. So I'm glad that it was being taken seriously
Mm-hmm.
because there was a lot of meetings on veteran suicide. So now that that's all done, there's going to be recommendations made.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what's the actual power and influence, and is there any enforceability that
Right.
that the study committee has?
Right. So the standing committee does the study. It's all published. It's all there to watch. Um, and then the report is created. It's sent to the government, and then the government gives a response. And in there, they respond to the recommendations. Either they support or whatever. Um, at that point in time, if the government has said they support a recommendation, morally, if not in every other way, they are required to make changes to better the circumstances that report is referring to. So that's where I struggle with the whole system. Obviously, if I ran my business this way, you'd never make it because it's so complicated and bureaucratic and political.
Mm-hmm.
So the reality is that we should be, as committees, also empowered to take those recommendations, which, as an example, 2014, uh, under the previous government, a study on transition was done, recommendations were made, 100% support from the committee. But in 2015, when I came on and I started serving on Veterans Affairs Standing Committee, what was the first thing we did? Study transition. And being a newbie, I just say, well, that was just done. And there's all these recommendations. Shouldn't we be referring to those and holding the government accountable to implement them? Oh, no, 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 we need to study it again. So it's study, 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 recommendations, recommendations, but there has to be that accountability. And that's especially the circumstance right now regarding military spouses and their families. A decision was made. It was sent as a recommendation. It was supported by the government in word. We need to do better.
So I guess what I'm looking for then, correct me if I'm wrong, the answer is no, there's really no enforceability. It's just suggestions, hopes, and dreams that comes out of the committee, and then really you're at the mercy of the government.
Um, yes, we are all at the mercy of whatever government Canadians put into power.
Yeah.
We do still have that, although it's certainly being challenged too when you see the potential for interference going on. Um, I'm not ready to give up on this country or on our ability to have a government that governs for the people with a actual prime minister, which means a servant leader. Um, we're phenomenal in variety. It's really something to come here from Saskatchewan. I'm in Ottawa today,
Yeah.
right? Or right across this whole country, representing in the House, the carpet's green for a reason. It's supposed to be everyday Canadians representing in that place. You need a few lawyers in there, no question. They're awesome. But, when I first came, I'm a small business person, and beside me was a mechanic, and there's a nurse and a teacher and
Well,
other,
that's what it's supposed to be.
that's what it's supposed.
A house of commons. And
That's right.
actually that same issue is like if there is a proper council that oversees and helps to read in every time there's a change of the guard for the Minister of Veterans Affairs. Um, Typically, a council like that gets full of people that used to be officers, and that's a horrible mistake
Mm-hmm.
because non-commissioned and officers are not the same people,
Oh,
you know,
absolutely not. No.
and so there should be a little of each,
Mm-hmm.
but it shouldn't be a bunch of ex-colonels and generals. That
Mm-hmm.
is just wrong.
Yeah.
Todd Heisey was an officer, great guy, so yeah, a Todd Heisey on there for sure.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. But there has to be a couple of corporals too, you know,
Yes. Yes.
has to be.
And that absolutely, I totally agree. And there also needs to be. Um, I've lost my train of thought. Unfortunately, a lot of the focus is on ideologies between political parties, right? Rather than focus on the people that you're serving and the best way to serve them, and to do it in a way that oh, I don't know how else to say it. It's best for Canadians. It isn't about holding on to power, because that's really what a lot over my time here I have seen. It's misleading. Honestly, I can't believe that in the House of Commons in my country, you can stand up and lie, but I can't say that you're lying,
Yeah. You can
right?
say it's untrue, but you can't say the word
Well,
you're lying. Yeah.
right, right. And even to be able to bring forth the proof, I guess, is what we really need to be able to do. And Canadians have pushed for that. Our armed forces, our veterans have been pushing for that in ways that, from my colleagues who've been in the House a lot longer than I, say they have never seen the engagement at the level that it's been, as high as it's been over the course of this decade. Just the depth of angst and concern and people speaking out. And I think that's where we have to see that transition into votes and deciding on a change, quite honestly. And I know I appreciate that, when you're serving in the armed forces, you're apolitical. You don't, I mean, that, and I get that and I appreciate that. But at the same time, when you hear the things that we've heard over this decade, you're asking for more than we can give, but then, let's just leave that alone. Everybody knows, right?
I
That
was
there's
just
just,
speaking with him the other day.
mm,
The person that was told that is Brock Blazchek. Brock's a
mm-hmm.
very intelligent guy,
Yes,
uh, very sharp and a nice guy.
yeah,
So, but boy, oh boy, does that ever sum it up. There's just something about that moment at the town hall when, why are you suing all these veterans in court? Well, they're just asking for more than we can give right now.
right,
And he said that to a guy with one leg.
right.
He's like,
Well, and that's what's,
he gave a leg.
yeah.
What are you giving?
And there's two items that are really important to me. That's service dogs and dealing properly with those who have been injured by mefloquine,
Hmm.
which is a horrific drug for many people. Not for everybody. It's like anything else. You have those who can take anything and they just carry on. There are those who are deeply injured, and the circumstances around that whole scenario um, are not acceptable. And it's because government didn't do the right thing at the
Well, I
time.
just had Dr. Robert Nevin on, and
Oh, he's awesome.
yeah, I suggest listening to that episode. Anybody that wants to learn about mefloquine, I believe that conversation, because I'm well enough versed that I could ask the right questions.
Hmm.
But I think that is the definitive conversation on
Yes,
mefloquine poisoning was the one that I just had with Dr.
yes.
Robert Nevin.
And we now have a mass tort. Again, you say, why do we have to go to court to get things dealt with? And that is definitely one of them. And then our service dogs for veterans. This government has imploded over trying to set simple standards, and we have a wild west out there. And veterans, there's good training, there's bad training, there's dogs that are costing a fortune, there are dogs that aren't, and they make a difference in a veteran's life where we're properly trained and needed and able to cope with or have a dog. I understand it's not for everybody.
One of the
But
challenges is that people don't know the difference between an emotional support animal and a veteran
exactly.
service dog.
Right.
A service dog has $30,000-$40,000 worth of training.
Hmm.
Like it's significant. These
Yeah.
are super dogs, and even in the veteran community, a lot of people don't. Oh, I have a service dog. No, you do
Right.
not. You have a
Yeah.
pet with a vest.
Exactly. And this is the thing. I'll just put. Can I give an advertisement?
Of course.
Okay, I'm from Saskatchewan, and we have an organization there, Odemus. I never say it right, but it means we dare in Latin. A service dog provider, RCMP, uh, retired veteran who used to train their dogs for service in the RCMP and now trains dogs for veterans and also has served in Ukraine. And when we were first dealing with this and they had a standards group trying to come to a decision about what the baseline should be for the federal government, and then of course it's provincial. It imploded. Well, it imploded partially because everybody who was serving had had a vested interest. Well, that's not how you set standards. You need people who are objective. You let all of those people come and speak to you, but and so when it imploded, Seamus Reagan was the minister. So I just walked up to him and I said, "Have you heard of this organization?" And he says, "No." And I said, "Did you know that incredible research on service dogs has been done in our universities in Saskatchewan? And this organization now actually has been fully accredited because they can't wait for the government. And those dogs are provided to veterans at the front end. They learn together. There are all the checks and balances, and they come out the other end with their dog, no charge. It's a charitable organization. And it's one of many. They don't want to control the whole country. They just want the opportunity to provide dogs where they get the opportunity. And there's no recognition yet. It's been a decade that I've been here in the House working on Veterans Affairs. And you're right. I have a note from an individual who's a veteran who wrote to Veterans Affairs and said, "I need a service dog. How do I get one and how do I get it accredited?" I literally have a response that came to him that gave us a possibility, a website you can go to. And I went to it and they said you could basically you just need the card and the the vest for the dog and you can get it here.
The impact that service dogs have is significant. And in our conversation today, we won't be able to get to the bottom of just how significant, but I've covered it several times
Mm-hmm.
uh, to try to unpack. At the end of the day, they save lives.
Yeah,
And a service dog is not an emotional support animal. It's something. It's just a completely other level. Some of the issues with getting properly certified are the people that don't think it's a big deal to pretend that they have a service dog, just so they can take their dog to the hotel or whatever it is. So they put a
mm-hmm.
fake vest on them. It's a service dog.
Yeah,
And they probably don't think that they're doing any harm, but they are.
they are. And I think you're right. It's unfortunate that veterans are provided a service dog. Many of them that raise the money to get that dog, and they're good dogs, but they don't have those special capabilities that they truly need. And it's just a matter of education and setting certain expectations, and actually helping to educate our provincial governments as well. But we can't do that when the federal government is flailing around on the issue as well. So
Well, and when it comes to veterans, like we just had a $4 billion cut over the next 4 years. what are you cutting from? 4.5 billion was the entire budget 10 years ago. So you cut the entire budget, but it's not going to impact services. What are you talking about? And the cover story that's being used. Oh, we're just readjusting the allotment for cannabis. Like, there's not $4 billion worth of cannabis that's being provided. I think the number was way less, whatever it was.
Hmm.
It wasn't
Hmm.
in the billions. It was in the millions. And so where's the rest of that money going to come from? And it's really concerning. And like we need more help, not less help.
You know what, Mark? In listening to the bureaucrats explaining it, I find it interesting because the sense I'm getting, and I'm not an expert on this, I'd say right up front, but this is an idea around $4 billion over the course of a number of years based on this and based on that. And the reality is they set the amount of funds that they're going to need for specific programs or services based on what they think they're going to be. So they're projections to a significant degree. Quite often there's areas where they have to add more. So that says to me, okay, this is something that's being used extensively. But then what they do is they say they're saving X billions of dollars. But it's because those billions of dollars weren't taken up or needed in a particular area. As an example, let's be honest, our World War II, World War I veterans cost a lot over time because there were so many, and we have less veterans. So what does that mean, right? So there's that side of it too. I agree, though it's misleading talking about the cannabis savings because you look at it and go, yeah, there's just no way that computes in the moment.
No, it's some pretty
So
bad math.
yeah, yeah. Bottom line, they don't communicate clearly. Same example we can even talk about right now with our steelworkers and people being laid off and giving billions of dollars to that company. Well, they weren't upfront and honest about what they were doing there, and yet they're still saying we're going to get our money back. Okay, what does that mean? Get our money back. As an example, I'll share this because it was a young 19-year-old voting for the first time. And he was saying to me, my friends and I, we've all decided we're going to vote for a new government. I said, okay, great. And then the day of, he gets hold of me, he says, they changed their minds. They're changing their minds. So I said, okay, well, ask them why they're changing their minds. And I actually saw this particular announcement, Mr. Carney speaking out and saying, we are going to build homes. And, young people are listening to this. You can afford. So they thought, okay, we are going to have homes built that we can afford. I said, okay, now say to them, that's called an open-ended question. Do you hear them in your mind saying homes we can afford to buy or to rent? And they just go, oh, I didn't hear what I think he's really saying, which is what we're learning, right? And this is something I don't think we teach enough uh, in school, in education, on how to discern what is really being said when people say what they're saying. Because a tax cut for 2 million people sounds great. But when you see how much that tax cut really is, it's not even buying you a couple of bags of groceries anymore, right? So there's a lot of confusion around what exactly they are saying they are doing. And it makes no sense to me that $4 billion is being cut from Veterans Affairs, but there are other departments that they aren't requiring to make any cuts in. So to me, that's the thing that is absolutely irritating. The one place there should be no cuts for sure, one of the places, is within the Veterans Affairs Department. If you're not going to spend it on cannabis, spend it on something else
Well, for
that
sure.
they need.
And just before we hit the record button button on this. I was mentioning to you today's news story on Veterans Affairs. So people that are receiving the pain and suffering benefit, which is not exactly handed out to just anybody.
No.
So there's a rule once you hit 60 or 65, whenever you start pulling your Canada
Right.
pension plan, that that there's an adjustment
Right.
to the rate that you get paid. So there's all kinds of veterans that have been getting letters over the last couple of weeks of, oh, by the way, you didn't report that you're getting Canada Pension Plan now, so we're clawing back tens of thousands of dollars, 50, 60, $70,000 clawbacks. And all these people are like, yes, I absolutely did. And plus, don't you have my birthday? Like you don't know what year I'm born? And for when you're collecting CPP. But right now, there's people, okay, $3,000 a month. That's what you're going to have to pay us back. Well, how in the hell is somebody going to do that?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. The, I have the same problem, but not to the same extent, because government departments don't talk to each other. And you'd think that information should be available to Veterans Affairs to know, obviously, they know the birth date of the person they're talking about, to be proactive on those issues. We just had a conversation with some folks from Australia and what they're doing on suicide prevention, which looks very good, but it's at the beginning stages. But they mentioned something that twigged for both us on our side of the table was they said, well, we don't ask if it's due to service. If you're a veteran and you've served, we're going to take care of you. Right? So I think Canada has some work to do.
What do you think are from everything that you've heard, you've been on the Committee of Veterans Affairs Standing Committee for a while now, a decade. What are some of the wins? Have you seen any wins in the last 10 years where things got better?
Pause.
Asked a tough question.
Well, two things. There's potential with the Invisible No More study on women in the service that broke open a lot of things to the light that were not there before. And I believe too, when you're talking about MAID, again, I want to believe there's incredible hope there moving forward because of the sacrifice and the depth of what veterans have had to go through who were offered that, and thank God, and I truly mean this, have not succumbed to what they were recommended. We cannot, on one side of the equation, talk about how phenomenal we are at preventing suicide, and on the other hand, offer MAID. It just shows the incredible dichotomy of ideology that's going on that needs to stop.
It's duplicitous.
Yes.
It's just duplicitous. It makes you can't suck and blow at the same time. Are we trying to prevent it or encourage it? Pick one.
Exactly.
You can't do both.
Exactly.
And the last 350 episodes are all about preventing it.
Exactly. Exactly. We're talking about, and yet they say, well, we really can't determine whether or not it's effective because, if they're not committing suicide, then you don't know that they were challenged with committing. Well, and now there's so much information out there that shows that is just not true. There are ways and means to help prevent it by talking very directly about it and providing resources and care that is needed, that I believe by doing the things we should be doing would show an incredible decrease in circumstances where we see veterans taking their own lives.
Other than veteran suicide, which to me has to be the top of the list of things to improve on and do a better job of preventing. Um, we talked about service dogs, how important they are, but that falls again under preventing veteran suicide because
Hmm.
that's
Yeah,
the bottom line.
exactly.
Um, what are some of the other veterans issues that you would like to see some movement on? Like what are the high flyers?
Oh, veterans have talked about these things so many times. Less, less AI, more humanity, longer serving, um, good quality people with the full education that they need to be able to communicate with veterans. And I do believe that involves having a lot more veterans engaged in those roles. Unfortunately, I think there's this attitude that, well, if you're part of that community, you're not going to be objective. I can't. I know that I firmly believe veterans overall would be far more objective and caring and fair uh, than any other person who might take on those jobs within Veterans Affairs. And I don't mean just upper crust. I mean everyday veterans who, you know, have been on the front lines.
There's a problem with how Veterans Affairs is run, the internal culture. This is what I'm getting from, because how else do you explain how there's been service agents and case managers that just the turnover is
Mm-hmm.
unbelievable. When I was still in the system and going through case managers, I think I had 5 in 2 years, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So you're rehashing conversations, which is not a good time, especially given the subject matter.
Right.
And you have to re-explain. And I've said more than once. I said, "Isn't that in the notes? Like, were there like I've talked about this and talked about this and talked about this? Is there really truly nothing in the notes that right in front of you right now? Like, do we have to rehash this?" And sometimes it's like, no, there's nothing in the notes. Other times like, oh yeah, you're right. I guess I should have read before I asked.
Mm-hmm.
But there's something wrong with that place if people aren't staying in the job, whether it's a lack of training to understand, and then it snowballs because now you have a pissed off veteran who,
Whoa.
who you're dealing with and is only pissed off because of the system.
Mm-hmm.
So it starts becoming a self-perpetuating problem.
Yeah, absolutely true. And veterans have made a lot of recommendations on ways that we could improve things. And I mean, I don't know how Veterans Affairs, the folks that are serving in different roles can't understand how debilitating it is getting those envelopes and having to answer questions over and over again. I don't, especially in this day and age, that you would
Mm.
need to do that. It makes no sense. I think a lot of the issue too has been around increasing people in roles. As an example, recently to get rid of the backlog, they brought in temporary additional caseworkers. When you enter a job with the term temporary in front of it, you know, and how much help is there to help you get on the ground? A lot of them are asking each other because they haven't been told how to do this or how to do that. So there's just a management issue. It's a huge operation, there's no question, but at the same time, when you look at the number of veterans who have those really challenging circumstances, it's not that many. It should not be too many to deal with. And if they dealt with it with a sense of trust and admiration, and I firmly believe if we just went ahead and did everything off the bat without having to go through trying again and again and going to VRAB and all of these things, we would have veterans with less moral injury, less sanctuary trauma, and happy families and everything as they leave. I even heard recently again of an individual who, when they left, I think it was Mr. Heisley, actually.
Heisey, yeah.
Heisey, sorry. No one said goodbye, basically. Like, you don't even get a gold watch like some CEOs do or whatever. There's just no sense of, wow, thank you. And I don't understand that. That has to be part of the culture too. I know the goal there is to break you down and build you up into what will be, someone who gets that you're part of a team and you've got to be there for each other. But at the same time, I think we need to do far better in saying, well done, good and faithful servant, and here, what can we do to let you know how much we appreciate what you've done. So,
Yeah, it was
whatever your role.
when I got out. It was a similar experience. It was don't let the door hit you on the way out. And I know for police services they have mug outs. I've attended a couple, but yeah, you get a gift from the junior ranks club. Like here's your little statue or whatever it is, or parting gift or a flask or whatever it is. Still got it upstairs on my little shelf.
Mm.
But that's about it. You just go pick it up. Here you go. There's no ceremony or
Right.
ritual, and you go back to visit. Like, what the hell are you doing here? Like, well, I missed you. We just came to. Never mind. I'll just leave. And
Yeah.
but that was back in '95 when I got out. But I don't think it's changed a whole lot. There is now a process when people are getting out of the military. It's a gradual process now,
Right.
and
Right.
so
Which is good.
that's good. That's a step in the
Yeah.
right direction. And I
Yeah.
wanted to say too that that even a blind squirrel finds a nut once in a while, and Veterans Affairs does do a good job sometimes. Like
Yes.
I
Yes.
I've heard these very self-centered people say, well, I've never had any problems with Veterans Affairs. Well, good for you, hero. It's like there are those good stories, and I'm happy for those good stories. That's good. I just had Devin Laird on the show, and he's had nothing but a good go with Veterans Affairs. So that's great.
Yeah.
But for every great example, there's 10 horror stories that'll make your toes curl. And also the people that say they didn't have any issues, I'd like to challenge every single one of them, but with a few simple questions. Like, okay, what was the injury? What percentage did you get? Did you know that that's a rubber stamp percentage? Do you know that that you can appeal that? Have you appealed it? And so people that just are like, you get what you get, and you don't get upset, that's great. But if I wasn't upsetting the apple cart a little bit, I would only have a fraction of what I have. Everything that I have, I had to fight for and get the Bureau of Pension Advocates involved, and I would go from zero. It's like, okay, here's my claim for tinnitus. Okay, zero, no. All right, I'll go through the process. I go from 0 to 90%. Well, that's a big gap. So was it really an honest 0 in the beginning? It's
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
yeah.
Agreed. And there are just the obvious, right? Which I'm sorry. I got to go out to Dundurn, our little base in Saskatchewan, and learn some things. But there were also snipers there doing their training, so we'll just go there. And they were awesome. I just can't believe anyone calls me ma'am, but it's pretty amazing. And they outfitted me with everything, and I'm standing there going, oh gosh, like this is heavy. And they were so kind. They said, well, ma'am, we don't have any ammo in your pockets yet. Right.
Yeah.
So I have to say, there are times when veterans will call an office. Even my colleagues will say a veteran called in, well, obviously if they're calling, they've hit a point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I say, just listen. And it'll happen, sometimes at my office, someone, not necessarily a veteran, but someone really intense, they'll call in and my staff, they just really struggle. And so they have the call there for me to make. And I call and, the first thing they say is, would you please say, I apologize to your staff? Because they're not upset with us. They're upset with what they're going through.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I have not met a single veteran that isn't as real as can be. And they go, oh, sorry. And I go, don't worry about it, right? It's all good. So don't give up. Keep working. You're right. There are many who do not have any issues, and I applaud that too. And we do have to appreciate it. It doesn't matter what you do nowadays. There are people who are not happy with you. That's very true. Social media, everything. I mean, I have a colleague who could not vote in the big decision on the budget, and it was horrific what was spewed all over line that was totally unfounded. And that's the world that we live in to some degree. So I just ask people to be gracious and listen, because if a veteran is upset, they're upset for a reason.
Yeah, and it didn't happen overnight.
Did not happen
Um,
overnight.
when you're suffering like I am with a post-traumatic stress injury, you're in a state of overwhelm all the time. So imagine you're in the beginning of a car accident and you see that you're about to have a head-on with somebody. Okay, that heightened state that you're at um, uh, just before the moment of impact. Well, what a post-traumatic stress injury is that moment, that heightened moment, doesn't
Never
go
goes.
away.
Exactly.
So the throttle gets stuck on full, which is why the system is predatory.
Yeah.
Because when you
Mm.
have bureaucratic hurdles to jump over, and you're already on full,
Right.
most of us simply do not have the ability to jump
Regulate.
through all these hoops.
Yeah.
So that's why when somebody gets hot with Veterans Affairs, because they have to do something twice or three times when they should only have to do
Or
it
more.
once, because the once is probably too much.
Hmm.
Um, that frustration is going to come out because they cannot emotionally regulate because they're in that
Right.
heightened state.
Right. I
And
hear you.
uh, understanding that, whether it's people in your office or Veterans Affairs, it's important to understand that. And then you can understand,
Exactly.
just like, oh, okay, I'm listening to a symptom.
Okay.
I'm listening to this person cannot emotionally regulate. I'm not going to take it personal. Like you said, just listen.
Yeah.
And by keeping yourself calm, the other person will calm as long as they feel like they're heard.
Being heard. And trust takes time, right?
Oh yeah.
And that's why it's so important to have people who are passionate about serving. I think of any committee in the House of Commons, it's this one. And in serving in Veterans Affairs, or anywhere where you're a first responder or you're dealing with people who are injured, you have to be there for the right reasons. And I worked level 4 care for years, going to university, and you could tell immediately who's there because they have compassion,
Hmm.
and those who don't. So yeah, kind of going all over the place here on you, Mark, but
No, 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 no. It's perfect, and I I thank you for staying in the committee and at least being somebody that's been there, got the T-shirt. So because that's what is needed, that continuity for continuity of service. We need people that are well versed and experienced in those positions.
yeah. And not to say anything negative about anyone who is serving on our committee now. It is unfortunate that it has gone through so many iterations of the new Standing Committee on Veterans Affairs, or as you mentioned, ministers or shadow ministers, all those different roles where sometimes, I mean, it used to be like in the RCMP, you sub out regularly, right, into different circumstances, so you don't have that continuity. But actually, in many cases, that's where people can grow trust and work together and not have to repeat. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
Okay.
I really appreciate you being with me and giving me an hour and a quarter.
Woo.
It's good of you. Yeah, it goes quickly, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Well, and again, thank you for what you do. And just a shout out to the veterans I have the privilege of calling friends, and the opportunities to serve in this way mean a great deal to me. So thank you.
Alrighty. Well, thanks so much, and please stay on the line.
Okay.
You're listening to Operation Tango Romeo, the Trauma Recovery Podcast for veterans, first responders, and their families. If you found value in what you heard today, help me help others by sharing this show. Share like the sugar bear, because sharing is caring.